The first thing she felt was the cold bite of the cuffs around her wrists. The second was the empty air swallowing her whole. Hey everyone, if you're new here, and your heart is already pounding, consider subscribing. The stories we tell here are about the moments that define us, and this one will redefine everything you think you know about strength. Her name was Maya. At 19, she was a paradox in the hallways of Northwood Academy, a place of gleaming glass and soaring ambitions. She was older than most seniors, having lost a year to her mother's illness, a battle fought in quiet rooms with drawn curtains. That year had sanded down her edges, replacing teenage frivolity with a solemn, watchful strength. She didn't seek the spotlight, she carried a quiet gravity that, for some, was an irresistible target. The bullies, Liam and Jax, were princes of this concrete and glass kingdom. Adorned in varsity jackets, Liam in royal blue, Jax in sun-faded yellow, they were the heirs to a legacy of athletic glory and unearned privilege. Their cruelty wasn't the brutish kind of back-alley thugs. It was a performative, laughing malice, designed to assert dominance and entertain an unseen audience. They didn't just want to hurt, they wanted to demean. Maya, with her thrift, store sweaters, and her nose always in a book about astrophysics, was their favorite antithesis. She represented a world they couldn't dominate with a thrown ball or a cocky smirk, and that made her a threat. The final confrontation didn't happen in a shadowy hallway, but in the brutalist concrete stairwell that led to the rooftop access door, a door that was, against all rules, left unlocked by a careless janitor. They had cornered her after school, their laughter echoing off the hard surfaces. It was over a project, a prestigious scholarship entry that Maya had poured her soul into, one that Liam had also submitted a shallow, plagiarized entry for. He'd been rejected, she'd been named a finalist. You think you're smarter than us? Jax had sneered, his voice a low growl. You think your little brain trumps everything. Liam, cooler, more calculating, simply held up a pair of shiny, new handcuffs. A prop, he'd called them, a joke from the drama department. We just want to talk, Maya. Have a little chat about how things work here. The struggle was short, desperate. She was strong, but they were too. The cold metal snapped shut with a final, terrifying click. The sound seemed to swallow all the other noises of the emptying school. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird in a cage of bone. They pushed her up the last flight of stairs, the metal door groaning open to reveal the vast, flat roof of Northwood Academy, 15 stories above the manicured lawns and snaking sidewalks of the campus below. The wind whipped at their clothes, a cold, indifferent force. See all that? Liam gestured broadly with a sweep of his arm, his blue jacket flapping. That's the real world. And in the real world, people like you don't get to win. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a cruel, beautiful backdrop to the ugliness unfolding. Maya's back was to the low parapet wall. She could feel the void behind her, a palpable pressure. Her mind was racing, a torrent of fragmented thoughts. Her mother's smile, the equations for orbital velocity scribbled in her notebook, the chilling certainty that these boys were capable of anything to preserve their fragile egos. Please, she whispered, the word torn away by the wind. Take these off. The project, you can have it. I'll withdraw. Jax laughed, a harsh, barking sound. It's not about the project anymore. It's about a lesson. Liam moved closer, his eyes devoid of any empathy, reflecting only the dying light. You need to learn your place. Way, way down there. In a move of shocking, casual brutality, they hoisted her up. For a suspended moment, Maya was horizontal, her body a bridge between the safety of the roof and the abyss, her wide, terror-stricken eyes locked on the smug faces above her. Then, with a coordinated heave, they launched her over the edge. The fall was not a silent plunge. It was a symphony of shattering. Her body struck a large, angled pane of the building's glass facade meant for decoration, and the world exploded into a million glittering shards. The sound was a gunshot followed by a rain of diamonds. Glass pieces, caught in the sunlight, hung in the air for a breathtaking moment, each one a frozen tear. Inside those first milliseconds of the fall, time didn't just slow, it fractured. Maya's life didn't flash before her eyes. Instead, a single searing memory consumed her. Her father, a man she hadn't seen since she was a toddler, a blurred face in a single, faded photograph. He was dressed in army greens, his smile a ghost. Her mother's voice, weak from the cancer, but fiercely clear, whispered from the past. Your father wasn't just a soldier, Maya. He was something else. Something they don't have a name for. Then, the memory was gone, replaced by a visceral, physical sensation. Not of falling, but of being caught. It wasn't a net. It wasn't a ledge. It was an invisible, impossible cushion of force that wrapped around her, a cocoon of solidified air. Her plummet didn't stop, it transformed. It became a controlled, swirling descent, a dance amidst the falling glass. The handcuffs on her wrists glowed with a sudden, fierce, internal heat, a searing white light that made her cry out. The metal, stressed by some unimaginable energy, groaned and then shattered, falling away from her wrists as mere dust. On the roof, Liam and Jack stared, their laughter dead in their throats. They hadn't seen the cocoon of energy. From their perspective, she had hit the glass, vanished in a cloud of glittering fragments, and then she was simply gone. The space where she should have been, tumbling end over end, was empty. A trick of the light, they thought, a desperate hope. She must have hit a lower balcony somehow. They leaned over, their faces pale, expecting to see a broken body on the concrete far below. There was nothing, just the settling dust of glass and a profound, echoing silence. Maya didn't land, she alighted. Her feet touched the soft grass of a secluded courtyard, one obscured from the main grounds by a stand of tall, whispering bamboo. Her knees buckled, not from impact, but from the sheer, mind-rending impossibility of what had just occurred. She was alive, she was unharmed. She looked at her wrists. The skin was red, burned and intricate, swirling patterns where the cuffs had been, like ancient runes branded into her flesh. They throbbed with a residual, warm energy. She looked up at the hole in the building's facade, a dark, jagged wound against the sunset, a cold, hard knot of fury and confusion tightened in her stomach. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The bullies, scrambling down from the roof in a panic, invented a story. She had slipped, they said. She had fallen, but she must have run away, hiding her injuries out of shame. They were believed, initially, they were the Golden Boys. She was the quiet, troubled girl from a broken home. The shattered window was written off as a structural fault, a tragic accident. But Liam and Jax couldn't shake the unease. The image of her disappearance was burned into their minds. They started seeing her everywhere. A fleeting shadow in a crowded hallway, a silent figure standing under a street lamp at night, her eyes holding a light that wasn't a reflection. Maya was gone from school. She was in the small, cluttered apartment she shared with her ailing mother, who was now in remission but fragile. In the drawer of her father's old footlocker, buried under a flag she didn't recognize and manuals written in languages she couldn't read, she found it. A journal. And with it, a dog tag that wasn't a dog tag. It was a dull gray metal, etched with the same runes that were now burned into her wrists. His name wasn't on it. Just a designation, Project Icarus. The journal was not the sentimental ramblings of a loving father. It was the clinical, desperate notes of a man trapped in a nightmare. He wrote of genetic modifications, of latent abilities coded into his DNA, abilities meant to manipulate gravitational fields and kinetic energy. He wrote of being a weapon, a parachute, less insertion specialist, for a black ops unit so secret it didn't have a name. He wrote of his desertion when he learned his wife was pregnant, his determination that his child would never be a tool, a government asset. The final entry was a scrawled, frantic message. The potential is heritable. It will manifest under extreme duress, a life or death catalyst. They will be watching. If she ever shows the signs, they will come for her. Protect her. The words, "they will come for her," were underlined again and again, until the pen had torn through the paper. The bullies hadn't just tried to kill her. They had, in their monstrous ignorance, unlocked a prison door. They had activated a legacy she never wanted. Weeks passed. Maya trained in secret, in the dead of night in abandoned warehouses. She learned to focus the energy, to feel the fabric of the world around her. She could make a pebble hover. She could jump from a 2-story wall and land without a sound. The runes on her wrists glowed softly when she called upon the power. It was a part of her as innate as breathing, and it was terrifying. Meanwhile, Liam and Jax, emboldened by getting away with their crime, had found a new target, a shy, artistic freshman named Leo. The pattern was the same: mockery, intimidation, the systematic destruction of his art portfolio. They saw it as reclaiming their throne, purging the school of weakness. They cornered him in the same concrete stairwell, their voices dripping with the same casual cruelty. But this time, they were not alone. Maya stepped from the shadows. She was different, not just in her demeanor, which was now as unyielding as steel, but in her very presence. She seemed to pull the light and sound from the space around her. "You don't get to do this anymore," she said, her voice quiet but carrying the weight of absolute authority. Liam sneered, recovering from his shock. "What are you going to do, freak? Fall on us?" They advanced, but they never reached her. With a mere thought, Maya pushed. It wasn't a physical shove. It was a wave of invisible force that slammed into them, lifting them off their feet and pinning them against the cold concrete wall. They hung there, suspended a foot in the air, their eyes wide with a primal, incomprehensible terror. They were trapped in an invisible vise. "You wanted to see me fly," Maya said, walking slowly towards them. "But you never stopped to wonder what else I could do." She leaned in close, her voice a whisper that froze the blood in their veins. "The fall didn't kill me. It awakened me. And you will live every day of your lives knowing that your worst act created the very thing that will forever be your nightmare." As she released them, letting them crumple to the floor in a heap of trembling limbs, a new threat arrived. Unmarked black SUVs screeched to a halt at the school's entrance. Men in dark, nondescript tactical gear emerged, their movements synchronized and efficient. They were led by a severe-looking woman with a sharp haircut and eyes that held no warmth. They were they from her father's journal. They had detected the energy signature from her first, uncontrolled manifestation. They were here to collect their asset. The final confrontation shifted from the stairwell to the school's main plaza. Maya stood protectively in front of a terrified Leo. Liam and Jax, still on the ground, could only watch, their worldviews shattering completely. The government team moved with lethal intent, firing not bullets, but high-powered tranquilizer darts and strange, net-like devices that crackled with energy. Maya was a whirlwind. She deflected the darts with pulses of force, using the kinetic energy of their attacks, absorbing it and throwing it back. She wasn't just fighting, she was conducting an orchestra of violence. She moved with a dancer's grace and a warrior's precision, a hero forged in the crucible of their hatred. In the end, as the lead agent advanced, pulling out a specialized weapon designed to neutralize her abilities, it was Jax, the follower, who acted. Grabbing a fire extinguisher from the wall, he created a massive, obscuring cloud of white foam. It was a pathetic, desperate gesture, but it was enough of a distraction. In that single moment of confusion, Maya unleashed a final, focused pulse of energy, not to destroy, but to disarm and disorient. She looked at the bullies, at the agent on the ground, at the boy she had saved. Then she turned and, with a single, powerful leap that defied physics, she was gone, arsing up and over the school buildings, vanishing into the gathering twilight. In the years that followed, the story of the girl who fell and flew became a foundational myth of the city, told in hushed tones online and in schoolyards. Maya never returned to her old life. She became a guardian spirit, a rumor of intervention. A child trapped in a burning building would find themselves floating safely to the ground amidst the flames. A bus teetering on the edge of a bridge would be gently pushed back onto solid ground by an unseen hand. Her mother received anonymous envelopes full of cash, enough for a comfortable life in a new, safe town. Maya had not been destroyed by the fall. She had been refined by it, her purpose crystallized. She was her father's daughter, but she was not his weapon. She was his legacy of defiance, a silent promise in the night, a reminder that the greatest strengths are often born from the deepest pains, and that sometimes to find your power, you first have to be pushed. And then, one crisp autumn evening, a man with wary eyes and a familiar, strong jawline stood on the very same rooftop where Maya's nightmare had begun. He had been searching for a long time. He clutched a faded journal identical to hers. He didn't call out, he simply waited. And from the star-dusted darkness she descended, her feet not making a sound as they met the gravel. They stood facing each other, the father and the daughter, two ghosts made real by a legacy of pain and power. He spoke a single fractured word, laden with a lifetime of regret and wonder: Maya. She saw in his face not the soldier from the stories, but the man who had run to save her. She saw her own pain reflected in his eyes, and in that moment the last of her anger dissolved. The world below, with all its bullies and its broken windows, seemed to shrink. They had much to discuss, a lost history to reclaim. But for now, standing together above the city lights, they were no longer just experiments or legends. They were a family, and their story, the one that began with a fall, was finally ready to truly soar. Their partnership became the stuff of a new, more potent legend. No longer just a lone guardian, Maya was now part of a team. Her father, Elias, brought a tactical mind and a deep understanding of the shadowy world that had created them. He taught her control, finesse, how to listen to the hum of the gravitational fields around her like a symphony. She, in turn, taught him hope, showing him that their power was not a curse to be hidden, but a gift to be shared. The first major test of their union came during a cataclysmic hurricane that threatened to drown the city. While emergency services were overwhelmed, the two of them worked in perfect, silent harmony. Elias would identify structural failures in bridges and high-rises, and Maya would become a living buttress, her will alone holding up crumbling concrete long enough for evacuations. She created pockets of calm air to guide rescue helicopters, and together, they formed a dynamic shield over a hospital, diverting the storm surge like Moses parting the sea. In the aftermath, as the sun broke through the clouds, they stood together on a levee, looking over the saved city. They were no longer just a myth or a secret. They were a promise, a force of nature that stood against the indifference of the world. The bullies had tried to erase one girl, but in doing so, they had unleashed a legacy that would protect millions, a father and daughter who had found each other, and, in the process, had found their true purpose. She didn't become a public hero. She became a legend, a ghost story told in the hallways of Northwood Academy. Liam and Jax were expelled, their futures in tatters, forever bound by a shared, terrible secret they could never speak. They had learned that heroes don't need parachutes, and monsters are not always what they seem. Maya, the girl they threw away, had become something more. She was free. She was powerful. And somewhere out there, in the vast, anonymous country, she was watching. She was waiting. Her journey, the one they had started with a shove into the abyss, was only just beginning. This story started with a fall, but it was really about a rise from victim to protector, from broken to unbreakable. Her strength was always there, a latent force waiting for the moment it was needed most. And that makes me wonder about all of you, about the unseen strength in your own lives. So tell me, from which part of the country are you watching this video? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one.